Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Anstine Audubon Nature Preserve. My name is Rebecca and I'd like to welcome you to our week 2 of our Anstine Adventures program. This week we're going to be learning all about native plants and pollinators. Typically when we're out in nature, we're usually looking for animals or birds or insects out on our trails. But have you ever noticed all of the plants around us? Without the plants, our animals wouldn't have food or habitats to survive, so their life is dependent on having a healthy ecosystem around them. So let's go explore the trails and see what native plants we can find here in Southern California. Native plants are plants that grow naturally in an area. They don't need anyone to take care of them because they rely on the temperature, rainfall, and amount of sunlight that is naturally available in their area. For example, some plants like the dry, hot temperatures of the desert, while other plants like the cool, wet winters of the Pacific Northwest. Here at Anstine, we have 4 distinct habitats of native plants. Oak woodlands, with their large oak trees that produce acorns. Coastal sage scrub, with a variety of sages and cactus. Mixed riparian, with plants that grow along our creek. And a pond, that has plants that thrive on being near the water all year long. Each habitat is unique in its own way, and actually one habitat, the coastal sage scrub, is so unique it is considered a threatened habitat here in California. Only about 10 to 15% of this habitat remains along our coast. Fires and residential development all impact this fragile ecosystem. Some people look at this habitat during our dry summers and think that the plants are dead and ugly. What they don't understand is that many of these plants go dormant, or they dry up due to the lack of the rain and the heat of the summer, only to bloom beautifully again with the fall and winter rains. For example, look at this garden we have here at Anstine. This is what it looks like during the dry months of summer. But then, when the rains continue, it blooms with a variety of wildflowers during the spring. So let's take a minute to look at some of the native plants we have here in our coastal Southern California region. Toyon, with its bright red berries, monkey flower, prickly pear cactus, white sage and Cleveland sage, California poppy, and milkweed. All of these plants depend on pollinators to help them reproduce. That is, to make new seeds that grow into new plants. Actually, about 75% of the foods that we eat rely on pollinators to help them grow. Animals like bees, butterflies, and birds all help spread pollen from plant to plant so new plants can grow. In return, these plants provide food and shelter for the animals. Sadly, some of our pollinators, like birds, are losing their native habitats. But by creating native plant gardens, we can help create a healthy space for wildlife to live. Let's see how we can help pollinators, like birds, by creating native gardens. Now that we realize how important native plants are, let's do an activity to learn about the particular species in our region. Each of you is going to get a native plant coloring page. You'll also receive an information sheet to teach you a little bit about your plant, as well as a picture of what your plant looks like in real life. You'll take the colors that you see in the picture and replicate those here on your coloring page using colored pencils or crayons. After the 10 minutes of this activity, you'll be joining me on video again so we can learn about our live lab where we'll be creating seed balls of wildflower seeds. I hope you enjoyed learning about native plants through your coloring page activity. In the next portion of class, you'll be watching a video on how to create seed balls. Seed balls are a way that we can distribute wildflower seeds without them getting eaten by birds or washed away with the rains. We combine soil, clay, and seeds, mush them all together, and then we will be putting them around your school campus for wildflowers to grow. Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me today as we create native wildflower seed balls. Native wildflowers are flowers that grow naturally in your region. We create seed balls to give them a growing start that combines potting soil, clay, and a little bit of water. So before we begin our activity, let's review some of the materials we'll need for today. First off, you'll need some potting soil that you can get at your local gardening store. You'll also need some of this seed balm clay. It's natural clay that has been collected and dried into a powdered form. We'll also need a cup of water, along with a pipette, a plastic bag, and of course, your wildflower seeds. The first thing we want to do is create our seed ball clay and soil combination. So I'm going to start with a half a cup of potting soil and a quarter cup of the seed balm clay. You'll tightly close the bag and shake up this mixture. Now, in order to make the clay and the soil stick together, we're going to need to add a little bit of water. So I'm going to use my pipette because we don't need very much water for our seed ball. To use the pipette, you're just going to squeeze the top, put it in your cup of water, and release, and it should suck up some water into the pipette that you can squeeze into your bag. I'm going to start with 5 pipettes of water, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If we add too much water too soon, it will become a muddy mess. So carefully close your bag. This time I'm going to release some of the air from the bag and mix up the clay, soil, and water. Now it's probably still going to be too dry. We want this to be the consistency of Play-Doh sticking together. So I'm going to have to add a little bit more water, and I'll add 5 more pipettes full of water. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Mix it up again by closing the bag, releasing some of the air. And now your soil and clay should be more like the consistency of Play-Doh. Our next step will be adding our native wildflower seeds. We don't want to add too many because we want to make sure that there's enough nutrients available for the seeds. So I'm going to add 2 pinches of my wildflower seeds to my clay and soil combination. 1 and 2. Close the bag and mix the seeds in with the soil and clay. Now it's time to create our seed ball. In order to make the correct size seed ball, you want to make sure that the ball will fit in between your fingers when you make an OK sign. So the ball should be small enough to fit in this circle. So at this point, you want to roll up your sleeves, take out a little chunk of soil, and start molding it into a ball. If you notice that yours is too dry, you can add a tiny bit of water, 1 pipette at a time, but it should be pretty good at this consistency. Then you can test the size of your seed ball and put them on the sides to dry.
You can either plant your seed balls wet as they are, or you can wait a week to allow them to dry before planting them in your garden.
And now it's time to find the perfect location to plant our seed balls. Seed balls don't need to be planted underneath the soil since they already have the nutrients from the potting soil as well as the clay, and they should have access to water, which can be a hose that you have in your garden, or at least access to our annual rains, as well as sunshine. So when you find the perfect location for your garden, you can just throw the seed ball and make sure it lands in an open space so it has sun and water availability. After the rains or your watering, you should start seeing your native wildflowers sprouting and enjoy a beautiful garden of California native wildflowers.